Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Spiritual Sisters podcast. This is Nichole Christine.
My name is Gabrielle Celeste, and today we have a very special guest with us here today. Her name is Michelle Larson, and we have actually been friends for a couple months now, but I feel as though we have known each other for ever, and we probably have with our higher selves in different dimensions, past lifetimes. And Michelle and I actually met at the end of March on our retreat with Nikki Novo, our teacher. And she studied in the cohort before mine, which was earlier in 2022, if I understand correctly. And I was in the fall of 2022. And we had some interesting experiences during that retreat together for sure. She took care of me when I was just dying. It was a little bit of energy, a little bit of possible COVID, because, one and the same. And yeah, I want to go ahead and pass it along to Michelle and let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about herself.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And definitely that retreat was like a whole trip in of itself. And for me, so I am an intuitive energy healer and holistic practitioner. I specialize in children and mothers. And really, I work a lot with starseeds, which is it's a big term, but either way, it's just very spiritually gifted people who have incarnated here. And I also do a form of muscle testing. So I really help integrate mothers and people with their children to kind of calibrate their energy back onto earth, help them with supplements, like the toxins, like pretty much anything that's bothering your physical body, we can touch with the muscle testing. And then anything that's impacting your spirit and your energy, we get inside the energy healing work. So I'm super stoked to be here.
Oh, we're so happy that you were interested in coming on. And I'm so fascinated by the work that you do. And I know Nichole and I have both had readings with you that we can speak to. But I'm just so curious as to how you got into this work. And you do so many different things. You are truly a powerhouse and you have so many areas of expertise. And I would love to know a little bit about just like the muscle testing and when you realized that there was a link between the spiritual and the physical, because you and I are working together now. And at the time of this recording, I truly have nothing but hives on my left side of my body, which is absolutely energetic. And there's a block there with receiving. And I've been pretty open about, just working on the self-worth and the solar plexus chakra. And I know that everything is connected. And so how did you come to find out and realize that there was a connection between the muscle testing, the physical, the spiritual, the energy, all of it?
Yeah. So it's super kind of my like gateway into muscle testing and spirituality was it all happened in the same summer. It was the summer that I got married. We had moved into a new house. Unbeknownst to me, that house was extremely spiritual. And by the end of it, we found out it had like 6 portals underneath of it. We were constantly being visited by all sorts of dimensions, entities, energies, like you name it, we had it there. And so that summer, I also got very, very sick. It was the summer we got married. So it was like shortly after our summer, like just a huge health escapade right after, like literally on our honeymoon. It was like the most embarrassing thing ever. It was hilarious. But inside of that, then my husband was like, you need to get help for this. And I was like, no way. I'm going to do this different. Like, I just felt like icky. I was just like, no, I don't want to do that. Found muscle testing, kind of cleaned up the physical side of things. But then it like opened this door where I was like, okay, physically I have things moving out of my body, but I'm like spiritually, like, what the hell is happening in this house? Like there's something with this house and this is so weird. We had, that same summer we got a puppy and it was our second dog. She was super like aware of things. So she was kind of our trigger that turned us on to like, hey, there's like other people in this house, which I had a sense for, but I didn't quite get it. And I just would dismiss it, like just shove the intuition behind you. Like, don't listen to that nudge. You didn't see anything. That was just light flickering. And then she would chase stuff around the house. And I think I just started like smudging and saging to start. That was like what I knew to do. And then I noticed there's these correlates between like my health and like when the energy would get really, really off. So I was like, what the hell? Like I'm not sleeping and I don't feel good because there's like shit in the house. And then like the like the whole experience being pregnant was like a whole extra like level of spirituality that came on and through. And he was definitely a starseed, had super big energy. And so that was like calling in all of this stuff. And then the dog, him and I had past lives together. It was just kind of this whole like snowball from like 2015 onward of just like spiritual awakening, like accelerated. And so that's kind of what had me be like, oh, I'm noticing these patterns. I can see it in my kid. I can see it in the dogs. I'm like, how do they infuse together? And it wasn't until maybe 2019 or 2020 when I started to put like the energy and the muscle testing together, where I was like, oh, I don't have to just do like a reading for someone. And at that point I was just doing chakra readings and like past life, basically traumas, like detangling them. And of course energy healing. And then over here I was doing muscle testing and I was like, wait a minute, I can see when somebody's like liver has got something going on. Sometimes it's a past life, or sometimes in their past life, I'm like, oh, this is why your thyroid, like you have your throat chakra is closed. Like, of course your thyroid's going to be deficient in whatever minerals. Like, and so I was just like, permission granted, go there, be weird, get people this, like all the help that they need. And I can just ask, like, does your body want physical help, supplements, i.e. supplements or modalities, or does it want like spiritual or energetic? Like we can really, the sky's the limit. But that's maybe in a short, long-winded answer, how I got into this and how I started to put them together. It was really just like this smack in my face experience when we moved into like the spirit house.
I have a question.
I knew it. I could see her mind was working. I could see, we're on video right now. And I was like, oh, Nichole has a question. And I have like 10 now. So yes, Nichole.
Can you share with us about what was going on in the house and the portals? Because I am fascinated with a spiritual house, with a creepy house, with things that go on in houses. And when you said that, I was like, what? So what do you feel comfortable sharing with us about that cool house?
How long do we have? There was so much in that house. I'd say the first thing we started to notice, and this was like, honestly, that female was, my Maybach was her name. So May, I'll call her May. She was like my biggest like indicator or kind of like barometer for like the spiritual effed upness that was happening. And so the first instance where I was like, I knew something was wrong, and I have such goosebumps even thinking about this, it was like, it was a split level. So it's like we had our kitchen and like a living room, and we were in the kitchen and she started growling upstairs. And I was like, whatever, girl, like, let's go upstairs. And then she tracked something into the kitchen. I couldn't see it, but I could feel something. I was like, okay, this is weird. Kept growling. So I was like, well, let's go downstairs. We did that like 2 more times. And I was like, this is really messed up. I don't want to do this anymore. So I was like, okay, like that was weird. And then that was like the least weird thing that had happened in that house. Like that was like the
most weird thing.
The weirdest thing. So May, like the female lab, she could not walk in certain places. So she would walk across the floor and something would yank her feet out. And it was like not, it was so freaky. It only happened to her. Like our male, our Moose, he's our other dog. He is pretty oblivious to this kind of stuff. And so he could walk anywhere, whatever, but she would get like trapped on the couch or trapped on a rug or trapped in a room. And there were certain rooms she just refused to go in. And then she'd kind of like scurry along. You could see her in these spots, like try and move quickly, but something literally would like grab both of her legs and pull her. It's like at the rodeo when they like tie up their feet and they just get swooped out under them. And it was so freaking messed up because we were like, okay, like, and at this point, my husband was like maybe 20% believing this stuff. But when that started to happen, he was like, okay, this is weird. So then if you came to our house, I called them energy bridges. We had like rugs and towels, like to get her across these little spots so she could move in the house. And they were like 80% effective, where if she could walk on the towel or the rug, like they couldn't get through to her. But if she walked off of that, they'd yank her feet out. That was probably the creepiest because it was like a physical something.
Okay, one more question, Gabs. I know you said you have 10. What do you think the different portals were to and from? Like, what was going on?
At the time, I had no idea. Like, I was just like, gosh, like, I don't know. And then I had an energy healer that I was working with. And we had tried to close them several times, but they would just reopen. I think now looking back, I'm like, oh, they were like dimensional portals. So like they would kind of, I don't know if they would like have 6 different dimensions, but they were definitely going places. And then I had one night where this guy was like standing over me, and I thought it was my husband. I was like, what the heck is wrong with you? Why are you like hovering and breathing over me? And then I like was laying sideways in bed, and I was like, oh no, husband's right here. So I was like, who are you? And then they had yeah, and then they had like this key, and it was so bizarre. I was like, okay, like it's like I'm not comfortable, but you're not gonna hurt me. But I was like, what the hell is happening? And then I think like 2 weeks later, I booked another session with my energy healer because it was the only thing I knew to do at the time. And I was just like, what is this? She's like, weird. I need this key for another client. And then this guy's been hopping your portals trying to get out, and he's stuck in them. So I think they were some like labyrinth dimensional portals, which now I do work. I work with closing some portals. I work with like traveling through portals. Like there's definitely a lot of dark entanglements that I can find hopping through portals with some clients where I'm like, oh, we have to go and release souls here. Like we have to go through portals. I will say if you're dabbling in this, be careful because sometimes you get into spaces you don't want to be in. So I'm very like controlled and confident when I go into some of these spaces, but otherwise you're kind of like found, and then like your energy gets messed with for like 3 weeks. But
there's so much there. I know Nichole is thinking, and I again have like
I'm typing in notes so I don't forget.
I have 20 questions now, but okay. I will say, aside before I ask my question, the girls that we trained with in my cohort, the one after yours, I did hear that a lot of us didn't know what we were doing in terms of opening portals. Mm-hmm. And that was why like our specific crew came in and had to be trained at the time that we were, because, and you know what, I think back to it, I was like, I mean, I have security detail of my higher self, which is great. And I'm so forever grateful. But thinking back, I was like, fuck, like I should have learned protections and protocols first, you know, but it's so hard. Like when you're finding yourself in this space, you kind of don't really know where to start. And how long, so, cause you are truly just a walking dictionary for this work and how it shows up in the body, you and our other girlfriend that we're going to have on as a guest in the fall. Because you guys are both intuitive holistic practitioners. And I just wanted to know how long ago was this for you? How many years in are you with this? And there's just like also just so many alien vibes that I'm getting.
Oh my gosh.
Talking.
Yeah. I mean, the ones that the energy that was pulling on her feet, that was robotic aliens. Like, so it was like Transformers, like what the fuck? Like I was like, is this for real? Sorry, can we swear? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay. But like, edit it out if you can.
No.
I was like, what the heck? Like, so that was, and it felt that way. Like it felt just very like caged and boxed in. Anyhow, so I started 2015 is when I moved into that house. So I'm like 8 years into it now, if my math is right in my head right now. But I definitely was very tapped into energies. Like as a kid, I just dimmed that light a ton. Like just, I could always tell, like there were certain friends' houses. I'm like, I don't want to go in the basement. This is weird. I also didn't sleep as a kid. Hated sleep. Like I maybe ran off of like 5 hours of sleep. Kind of still do. Sleep is such an issue. I see it a lot with starseeds as well. Like we just don't. But for me, like a theme in my whole childhood was like being safe. And I didn't realize it until like this 2015 like catalyst experience. Like then looking back, I was like, oh my God, everything freaking makes sense. Like I totally get this now.
Let me ask you a question, because last week we had on Anna Marie and we were talking about mental health and spirituality. And that's always been, for me, something that I've been scared of as far as dabbling into spirituality stuff, because I don't want to find out that maybe I have some kind of mental health diagnosis, and it's scary. So I wonder, at any point when this was happening, or even when you were younger and thinking, okay, this is happening, I'm experiencing this, oh my gosh, am I losing my shit, or is this real? Because I think that can be really scary for some people, especially for the people that maybe have their clairaudience, right? So people that can hear, people that have the clairvoyance. So what is that? You can see,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't have any of these things really. So for people that are like hearing things, seeing things, that's one of the things that we screen for in mental health as far as any kind of psychosis, delusions, things like that. So was there ever a time where you were thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going crazy, I'm losing my shit? Or did you always just know, like, no, I'm pretty sane and this shit's really happening?
I think as a child, it definitely, there was a sense of like, what's wrong? But I had no one to validate me, and so I also didn't share with anyone. Like I had a lot of very messed up things that, like, I mean, at one point, and this was like, I'll drop a bomb here and then we can digress it later, but like post abduction, but I didn't realize this. But I was like afraid of airplanes. And so I would like be afraid to be outside. And if anything was flying over, like we had, like, I lived in the country. And so it's like we played outside all the time. I'd like book ass to the garage or book ass to the house or hide under trees. And I'm like, why am I so scared? And then I'd count everything in two, like totally psycho. Told 0 people, was super obsessed with like the X-Files, never had a birthday party, but wanted to plan like a fake abduction birthday party with one of my best friends. Like we were like, let's have a birthday party. Let's have all these people over. They'll be in a tent. We'll have all these flashing lights. We'll play the X-Files theme music and we'll pretend like we were stolen. Like, what the?
Can we do that as adults? That sounds really fun.
Yeah, I had like an escape room, but like the abducted.
Love escape rooms.
Someone could coin this and just send us some royalties. That'd be so great.
You coin it, girl. This is your idea. Hey, we're trademarking this
True.
right now.
Fact.
Alien Abduction Escape Room TM by Michelle Larson. Yes, guys, she did say abductions, and I can't wait.
Yeah. So all to say, like, definitely the mental health coupled with like childhood traumas, like for sure, which no one was talking about. Like all 4 of my sisters, we like were molested and touched by someone very close in our family, and like we didn't talk about it. So like I was going to talk about the shit I was experiencing. Like, no way, totally not safe. Now fast forward to and like I'd go into very dark places. So on one hand, I do look back and I'm like, was I mentally stable? Like I have no idea. Like who is 8-year-old me and what was she doing? Not really sure. Then flash forward to like the 2015 space. There was definitely a level of like, I don't know if I'm okay, but this is real. This is happening. And I think having like the puppy to validate was like a huge thing. So I was like, I can't make that up for her. And then once we had our first son, he would talk to things in his room. He would like become stunned and frozen and shaking, pointing in corners. And he was like 8 months old. Like he was not old enough to have any like pre-programmed experiences. And we weren't certainly putting that there. So like once we had my son, it was like so validating for my husband. He's like, this is okay. There's really actually stuff happening. So then that outside validation, I was like, I'm not crazy, but everyone I talk to thinks I'm crazy. And this is how like people end up in psycho homes, you know, like or mental institutions. Thank you. Sorry for my slip.
Yeah. And that's scary. That's scary because you don't know. And then I'm not sure how old you are. I'm guessing maybe we're around the same age-ish.
I'm 31.
Okay. So, and even back then, it was like, you didn't really talk about trauma the way we do now. And I'm older, and even back then, I don't know how old your sisters are, but if they're older or younger, but we just didn't talk about those things. Right? I mean, and I'm fortunate enough that I didn't have anything major like that. But it was just part of the culture. You didn't talk about it. Our parents, their generation, you didn't talk about it. You just had something happen and, oh, well, you move on. Everybody has something happen and you just deal with it and that's it. And like, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. I'm so glad this generation's changing that.
I think that's why
they're doing a lot of other things that I don't agree with. But that's one thing that I can get on board with.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of the work that I do with mothers who have like these starseed kids, these spiritually gifted kids, like that is part of it's some of the training we do is just like, you don't have to put things, you don't have to like project what you think is happening for your kid over there, but like validate that something's happening, because I'm like, this will change their whole life. If their life can make sense at 5 years old and move forward, then they won't have to like recreate their whole life once they're 22. because that sucked. Like
Yeah.
to then later learn like, oh, that's what was happening, or oh, this is like a deeper part of my soul aspect, is that like I have this ET technology, I have this like alien DNA, whatever you want, however you want to say it. It's like, oh man.
So I have a question. So you work very closely with mother and children and working with starseed babies, and
Mhm.
you also have a wealth of knowledge about just starseeds in general. What can you say, or have you noticed anything in particular about the babies born in the last 4 years? Because I was looking at the charts for some kids born in 2020 and 2021, and like think about what was going on at this time, you guys. That those transits in the sky are literally reflected in their birth charts. I'm like, these babies are so like they want to come to Earth at this time. Like,
They said the
what?
COVID babies are kind of wild. Like they're
Mhm.
a whole nother breed on their own.
What have you noticed?
Yeah. So what I'll say is like a stereotypical like starseed kid. Now, none of them are the same. So like we'll just say that. But they're what I see are like new earth children. Like there's a few different ways like I've kind of coined how to talk about them. But they're not like your normal kids. You're like, wow, you don't sleep, or traditional parenting things just don't work with you. And so what I see is all these parents like hardcore struggling because they're like, whether they have kids or it's their first kid, but they look at all these other kids out there and they're like, my kid's different. And it's not like on the spectrum different, but it's like there's just something, and it's the energy of these kids. Like they're just beaming different energy. Their frequency is so much higher. So what I've seen with a ton of these COVID babies is that they're, or really any from COVID to now, it's like they're here to like awaken the parents. So they're like bringing this higher frequency, and they're older souls. They know so much more, and they're coming in and they're just dropping these bombs on these poor parents who have no idea. Like, of course they signed up for it, but they had no idea it was going to be like this. And these kids are kind of like, yeah, like that shit's not going to work with me. Like that the 90s way of parenting isn't going to work. Like actually nothing's going to work. You have to come up with new systems, which is half of what like it's partly why I like birthed some of the like readings that I have, is just like we have to look at their room, like what direction is their bed, we have to look at their astrology,
Yes.
we have to look at their like cosmic blueprints, we have to see what they need, because some of them need sunshine, some of them need like crystals, some of them need fairies, some of them need all of it. Like you don't know.
Just to validate that with respect to like having the portals in the house and like children sleeping in a certain direction, that actually absolutely checks out with Chinese astrology and feng shui, because you are meant to sleep in certain directions. Some rooms in the houses are better for you. Certain times of the year, it's better for you. It's a whole thing, you
Yeah.
guys, once you really go down this rabbit hole. So that is
I
so
infuse quite a
interesting.
bit of feng shui, like inside my practice and my readings, but also like in our house, where I'm just like, okay, like if you probably you don't ever want your head up against the bathroom, but if it is that way, you put a mirror on the other side of it. You send the energy of the toilet back. Otherwise, you wake up crabby. You're like, try that with your kids if you have them. You're just like, if your headboard is up against a toilet, send the energy back. You're like, it's just simple little hacks that just help, because it's energy and frequency. We have to start seeing, and it's like no joke, like now that we're in like an air sign versus an earth sign, it's going to be energy and frequency versus earth stuff.
I have a question. How do you determine, so if you're working with star seeds, like how do you figure out where they're from?
Usually, so there's a few different like descriptors or just ways that their energy will present. Like a Syrian starseed for the most part. Now, again, there's so many different, and there's hybrids, like there's combos and there's things like that. But like they're gonna come through. They don't have hair. They like their capes. They really like the sun. So they'll just be different like key codes almost that they'll show me. My son is a blue avian. He has for his whole life loved the color blue. And like one of my first readings I ever had with him from Camilla to figure out what he was, she's like, his energy's blue and he's a blue avian. I was like, makes sense, checks out every day of the year. Like, oh my goodness. So it kind of I guess you could look almost like if you're in someone's like Akashic records and you almost can like pull up a book and just tell like who they were in that lifetime. that's kind of how it is, like pulling up their energy, so to speak. You're just kind of like, here's your energy, like who are you? And then we're going to start to see different things, like, do you have feathers? Are you really earthy? Are you like, what are you willing? And sometimes they don't want to show you because the parents can't handle it yet. And so I'm just kind of like, noted, I see that you're very starseed. I can see your, like the beings that are with you, your guides. If the parents aren't ready for it, I'm just like, oh, their guides are ahead of their time. I'll use other language, like whatever they can actually like digest, but.
And so not everybody's a starseed, right?
Not everyone. Mm-mm.
Are me and Gabby starseeds? Because you've read both of us. Was that anything that came through for us?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where are we from?
Definitely. Oh man. Now I'm like, ooh.
Some water planet.
Yeah, probably.
So I feel like it's because we're not there yet because I have so many other questions, and I know Nicole's thinking, but I feel like there's something bigger going on. Like all the alien conspiracy theories, we've touched on conspiracy theories, and you mentioned abduction.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, do you think that some people do agree to literally come in and be starseeds and wake up and like wake other people up, whereas like other people agree to come to Earth and they're like, just living a very human asleep life?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So there's like, you have like light workers, which like not everyone that's a light worker is a starseed, and not everyone that's a star. I mean, most starseeds are light workers. But like you have different themes that you come into life with, and then sometimes there's just like the human experience, how I've seen it shown to me, and how I've had it validated through other books and other like documentaries and things, is like, you can't, like the evolution potential of Earth is so grand. Like you can go and have a lifetime on some other planet, but like you're only going to grow this much as a soul. But like to come and be on Earth, you get to grow this much. And so I think some people, depending on what game they're playing, they're like, I just need to live on Earth and like learn some Earth themes. It's almost like a humbling, like a come back down literally to Earth. You just need to live and just drum along. And that's part of your mission, is just to like learn to exist, have pleasure, have play, eat food. Like it's not a thing we do up there. And some people, you literally drop in because we no longer have home planets. They've been destroyed in like reptilian wars or different galactic things that have happened. And so you're like, no, like Earth, what happens on Earth matters for the cosmos, matters for the greater universes. Like we got to come here and shake shit up, because otherwise, like there's this turning point, and if we get beyond it, can we go backwards? I don't think so. Like we have to rise up. That's my thought. Did that answer that?
Yeah, and my brain's just yeah.
Her wheels are turning. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it. Yeah.
What do you think came first for you? So like chicken or the egg. So for you, do you think it was because you're a starseed, that's why you experienced the abductions? Or you would have been a starseed anyway. So do you think, if you're a starseed, did that kind of prompt the abductions? And then, or did the abductions kind of like awaken you to want to do this work? Or do you think you would have gone down this direction regardless of if you had the abductions? I think that's probably maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think like they happened when I was so young, and like honestly, we had like a 2-story, so like 3-level farmhouse, and like we slept on the top level, and my parents would find me screaming bloody murder in the basement. And it's an old farmhouse, like it's rickety crickety. You can't open a door, you can't walk anywhere without it like creaking. And everyone in the house, I have 3 sisters, so there's 4 girls plus my parents, and dogs and cats, like whatever. And no one heard me go in the basement. And so later, once I had like rememberings and kind of had this like validation of like, okay, I don't know how you're going to take this. This was like my first energy healing session ever. She's like, I don't know how you're going to respond to this, but like, you've been abducted by aliens. And I was like, it makes sense. I was like, yes, that's totally it. I'm like, I used to have these night terrors. That's just what we called them, night terrors. I just wake up in the basement. And then one of my second oldest sister was like, I have rememberings of these. And I was like, you've never shared this. She literally just shared this with me like a year ago. And I was like, what? She's like, I thought I told you. And she's like, I remember the whole house was frozen and there are all these green lights and like we couldn't move. And I was like, that checks out, because in my memories of it, it's like I can see, and it was like it was the grays, or kind of like evens, but like they're not all bad. And that's the other thing I'm trying to get forward in a lot of my messaging is just like humans, there are good humans, there are bad humans. There are good ETs, there are bad ETs. There are ones who have certain agendas that don't really align with that. Like there's so many different ways. These were not very good ones. So they were like the tall grays. They had long bulby fingers, and like we had bunk beds with my baby sister and I. And like I think they'd taken me several times, but one of the times they were coming to take her. And she is like a my lab baby, so hopefully you don't get flagged by that. But super interesting. And I was like, you can't take her. And then they punished me. Then they took me up and they're like, fine. Then you have to watch like crooked shit happen. And I was like, okay, this is great. Like, so I think because of that, like being such a young age and so many times, I was just like already like into the alien stuff. Like I was like, I've seen them. I've been on ships. I'm scared of what's above. I don't feel safe in my body. And then just like fast forward till when it started happening again. I was like, wait a minute, we have control. Like we have willpower. No one told me that as this 5-year-old, 6-year-old girl. Had I known that, like I maybe could have stopped it or called in good interactions instead of like crooked agenda filled ones, negative agenda filled ones.
Go, Gabby.
I mean, we're going to need a 2-parter. That's for sure.
No, yeah, she's coming back at least 1 or 2 more times. At least once, probably 2.
Okay, your abduction. And so
Go ahead.
I have a lot of galactic things going on in the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of got a vision, and I know my team pretty well. And if, you know, and my council has been talked about and spoken to in a previous episode, and I did see aliens on my council, and I did see those long bulby fingers. I'm like, are they the Greys? Like I couldn't make a vision of them, but I do feel like there is. It's just so fascinating for me, and I don't even know that this is a question. I'll pass it off to Nichole, but my observation is I have a really hard time with people who don't think that there's life beyond planet Earth. I'm like, you guys, the aliens are way fucking smarter than us. Humans are like child's play to them.
Yeah.
like we're not going to be able to replicate like ships and alien crafts that exist in Area 51. Like, no. Like, come on.
Humans are dumb.
Yeah.
Well, and there's like to some degree our government's been working with them for a long time. It's not even like a secret anymore. So there's that. And then there's like, you know, the secret space program, and there's like all this technology that we've like discovered or recreated or been given. And it depends on which group that they're working with. Our government has hands in many different pockets, or they have pockets in many different branches of our government, rather. So it's super interesting where you're just kind of like, oh, like the programs. And I've seen this over people's, especially when we start to work with like kind of opening people's intuition and like expanding their awareness. Like there'll be like these overlays or these programmed beliefs or even like these dark seeds that like will remove and pluck out of people. And then they're like, oh, I can see now. And you're like, that's just part of the matrix. You just have these layers of stuff. Or even if I think of like human design, where they're like, you have programs. I'm like, I read work with programs for a long time, long before human design became a thing. But like just these overlays that literally suppress your awareness, or you have a calcified pineal gland, you know, and you're like, okay, what do we do?
So it's so interesting as well. Do you feel like, so I also want to share, before I was, you know, even when I first started this work, like aliens were not a topic. I'm nearly 5 years in, and aliens are now a thing for me. I'm like, no, it's fucking real. Like even like talking to my parents when I can remember a conversation around 15, 16. And I was like, do you guys believe in aliens? And they both were like, yeah. And I was like in my mind, I'm like, no, you know, like deny, like that's not real. But now, and even at the beginning of my awakening, I was like, no, this isn't like really for me. But once you go down the rabbit hole, you're like, oh shit, like they are there. They are here on planet Earth with us. And not all are bad guys. There's nothing to be scared about, just to put that out there. But I just feel like there is a lot more out in the universe that is yet to be discovered. And Nichole, yes. I can see you thinking.
I'm just making notes so I don't forget to ask everything I want to ask. Okay, Michelle, first question. Have you seen Fire in the Sky?
No, I've not seen that. I got to. I've got to watch that.
Have you heard of it?
No, I think we talked about it in our
when we met.
Do we want to talk call? Yeah.
It is so good. Gabby hasn't seen it either. And so it probably came out before you guys were born, babies. And it was my first, I think it was like my first kind of like intro into aliens as far as like a movie, and me really believing it. And then me kind of being scared as a kid, thinking that I was going to be abducted. I thought I was going to be abducted by aliens. I also thought I was going to be abducted by like a kidnapper because my bed used to be right under the window. And that was back in the days of like Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted. And my mom would always watch those things. I was like, someone's going to come in and take me in the middle of the night. It's either going to be an alien or it's going to be a kidnapper. Okay, so you haven't seen it yet. We got to do like a remote viewing party because it is so good. And we're going to cover the Travis Walton abduction soon because that's like my favorite abduction, I think. Okay, second question. Did either of you guys watch American Horror Story double feature? Okay. So in 2021, the season that they did was a double feature. They did, I think, 5 episodes of one story, and then they did another 5 episodes of another one. Go ahead, Gabs.
Soft disclosure.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is happening. Yeah.
Okay. So I still don't quite know what it is. I know we're going to get to it maybe in the next episode with Michelle. But so they were talking about, I think the second half of the season was the government back when, who was it? Eisenhower. I think it was back when like Eisenhower was in office. That was who they were portraying as president during that time, and how the government was aware. And then they were showing that some high government officials were reptilian people. And mind you, this was before I've heard of any of this stuff. And I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is so weird. Like reptilians and lizards. Like, I don't understand what this is. But now I'm hearing more about it. And I'm like, okay. Anyways, interesting season. And there's only 5 episodes. So if you guys have time, check it out. Third thing. I can't even keep track anymore. Third thing. Okay. What is my lab?
So my lab is military abductions. So it's been around for a very, very long time. There's a few different ways in which they use it, but they'll like the military will abduct you and use you
allegedly.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I'm hearing, right? Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
And this isn't real, guys. There's no secrets out there. We know.
This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah, don't take
Disclaimer.
anything we say as
No.
truth. This is all for entertainment and fiction. Okay.
That's a whole rabbit hole. That's...
Okay, I need to look into that. And the last...
It's very dark. People who have my lab in their charts, in their existence, in their stuff, like usually it's kind of like Pandora's box, and I really I can say that, but we don't go into it at all. Like maybe there's been one person I've worked with ever that like we can actually go into what that is and entails, or what those like past life rememberings or experiences are, because they're usually not a very good experience.
And they would have that in their birth chart, or what chart?
Like their energetic reading, like when I pull their stuff up. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to.
But I would be curious in the astrology aspect, like where that would apply through. I can give you my sister's details because that'd be so interesting. Yeah.
Well, when you said past lives, and Nikki, I think you have another question by the look on your face. But
it wasn't a question, just a statement.
Oh, okay. So go for it, and then I'll.
No. Go ahead.
Well, when I had my reading with you, and even just like when we were hanging out at retreat, which was a vortex on its own, because there's a vortex on that land and it's beautiful. It's super healing.
Yeah.
But, I've been really open. I'm like, gosh, I'm exhausted, you guys. Like my higher self is like, I can't believe you have to fucking come back and do this. Like we know what, I got other things to do in different dimensions after this go around. But you have said, I know, literally. And you had said, you're like, oh, it's like your past life. It's like exhaustion that you have to come back. And the fact that like we literally take on rememberings and our cells and our DNA hold on to that. And we're feeling that in this lifetime. I'm like, that makes so much fucking sense.
Mhm.
We did an episode recently. Oh, for our birthdays, my Akashic Records reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I was
Go
with
check
Gabby.
that one out.
Yeah.
Rate and review.
Episode,
Sure.
whatever, I forgot. 15, 16, 14, 13. I don't know, whatever it was. Anyway, so I got a message, and Gabby and I were out having dinner, and someone's like, hey, I just listened to your episode. Do you have this placement on your birth chart? And I was like, I don't know. And luckily I was with Gabby. So she's like, let's pull it up. So we pulled it up, and Gabby's like, yeah, like why? So this person said, oh, people that have this placement in their birth chart are typically clearing karma from like Atlantis and Lemuria.
Mm-hmm.
And they recommended this book, and I got the book and I listened to it. And they were describing some scene. And as they were describing it, I was remembering, like, I've had this dream before. So that was really interesting that placement in the birth chart spoke to something that came up in my Akashic Records reading, and then that I remembered as having dreams about.
I remember the placement because I went to go look
Mm-hmm.
to see if I had it. And
Uranus in retrograde. Yeah.
Yep.
Ooh.
Okay, and then the last piece that I just wanted to say is, so there are some things that I really believe in. There are some things I don't really believe in. And when it comes to aliens, I really believe that there is more life. I don't think it's just us. I think there are definitely other beings on other planets and other dimensions, whatever it is. Actually, we were listening to this whistleblower episode.
Shout out
Beyond the Shadows bonus UFO whistleblower. So it prompted me to go listen to the actual interview of the guy. I think his name was like David Grush or something. And he was talking about how maybe the aliens are not necessarily coming in from other planets, but from other dimensions, like within this, which kind of like fucked me up just to think about that. I was like, I don't like, this is crazy. And this is why the government can't tell us, because our brains can't comprehend it. Like we just can't. And so I was telling my husband how I believe in alien abductions. Fire in the Sky was the first one I think that I really believed, and other ones. And I told him, and this is no offense to you, Michelle, or to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I can believe the big stories, but if someone tells me, oh, I was abducted, I'm like, but were you? Like, and so I don't know why my brain can't, like, believe, okay, well, why do you believe this stranger story? And why are you having a hard time believing the story of somebody you know? And I don't understand, like, where that piece doesn't connect for me. And it's more of like, not that I think people are lying, but it's like, but how do you know? And maybe it's that, like, that piece of, there's no way I could know somebody, right? People that have been abducted, like, I don't know them. Like, those are just random people out in the middle of nowhere. And so I mean, that's the part of my brain that I'm trying to get on board, because I believe it's real. So why don't I believe it's real when it comes close to me? And maybe it's like a fear thing. So it's like, no, that's not real, because if it can be further away from me, then I feel like safer. I don't know. I don't quite get it. So no, that was just my last little piece.
I'll say, like, my little sister has, like, can't remember much of childhood, and we're like, is that trauma? Is that because of these? Is da, 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 da.
Right.
But she's the same way, where she's kind of like, sometimes, like, when we talk, I just kind of have to go home and, like, pretend like we didn't talk, or like, I just rather not know about some things. And so I'm very, like, I don't know, not scripted, but like safer when I speak with her, because I know that it'll freak her out, which is part of what came up at the retreat, was like, I scare people. So I've really been, like, trying to wrap my head around, like, how do I step into my purpose and my mission without scaring people? Because there actually takes a little bit of, like, well, this is real, but here's fear, and then here's how you empower yourself so you're not scared about it. And so what I do say to my sister, who is scared of the same things, where she's kind of like, yeah, it's probably a thing, but like, don't tell me about it, because I'd rather just sleep better at night. Just like, okay, but it like, it's going to happen if it's going to happen, unless you can protect yourself and do spiritual protection or set boundaries, or like, even just like, this was probably, I don't know if I told you about this, Gabby, but it was like a month ago, maybe. Like, I had another experience, but I like could feel it going to bed, and I was like, fuck, okay. And then I was like, no, I have free will. And then I was like, oh, I'm actually open to this, but it has to be good. And it was like, I did all of this shit. Like, I left my body. It was the most crazy thing I've ever had. Like, I don't do drugs, so I wasn't hallucinating. I wasn't high. Like, it wasn't, I'd be curious if I did start doing drugs, what would happen, to be honest. But I'm not really about to go there because I don't need to.
That's scary.
But it was like, oh yeah, we have free will. Like, I could have said no and nothing would have happened. But I was like, I'm open to it, but it has to be with the good guys. It has to be with like my team, and it was just like, it was so activating. I was like, oh my God. And I like could feel myself leaving, but it was just, I don't know.
I wanted to echo that because you were the first person I thought of when I was like, well, if the aliens are going to make contact by the end of the year, which I feel like part of me is calling that in, because that gives me a clear identity and sense of who I am, and what really I'm here to do. But I was like, fuck that. It has to be good. And I think it will, just because my security details there. But yeah, I've heard your story, and I've heard another acquaintance that we all know, when she had her experience, and she was like, it's like they're in my brain. Like, I couldn't, like, I had no sense of self, like with my body. And I think because I'm also in a space where she was before she was calling them in, and they weren't bad, like the ones that she communicated with. I'm also setting that intention that I'm like, you guys, like, it has to be good. Like, give me in a sense of like what's coming, because when I look at the astrology for 2026, 2027, 2028, I'm like, I don't fucking like it. So, yeah, you know.
Let me ask you too about your husband, because you said in the beginning, I think like before your son was born, he like maybe didn't quite believe. And then when things started happening with your son, he either jumped to 20 or maybe he was at 20. I don't remember exactly. But as far as these things, like when you told him, or when you did tell him, okay, I had these experiences when I was younger, you know, not just once. Actually, and I kind of want to hear more about that. Not kind of, I do want to hear more about that. Did he believe you? Did you get the sense that maybe he didn't believe you? Did you, like, what was your thought? Because like my husband is like the biggest skeptic. And so if I tell him something, his response is kind of, okay, like I believe that you think that. Like, not necessarily like I believe you, but yeah, I believe that you think that, or I could understand how you could think that, but it's not like, oh yeah, I believe. So what is your husband?
It's kind of interesting, because really, like, up until now, and even inside of like this year, this month, this episode, like, I've really not shared that with people, because kind of in the same sense of like, people probably aren't going to believe you, or you know, it's like, even inside of like some of the childhood trauma stuff, you know, where people are like, did that really happen? And it's like, yeah, okay, you tell me what was happening down there, like, fuck off. You know, no, it's not that bad, but but really, you know, it's like, you get into some of these like the Me Too movement, and you're kind of like, okay, everybody and their mother has this story, and you're like, okay, but like, let's look at that for a minute. And I will say, when I had this and so many things made sense, I think the way that I shared it with him was so just like, oh my God, I can actually pinpoint and echo. And actually, when I trace it backwards, I'm like, now I don't feel like I'm crazy. Now I don't feel like the feelings I had, the mental instability I had, the like dark era that I went through. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I actually feel a little bit better, because I kind of didn't know what the heck that was for a while. And then even with like the health stuff in our house, I was just kind of like, oh, like, we now have control over it. So I don't know like where he was at, but he could see that I was at least like putting things together. And he's kind of like, well, like, I feel very fortunate that he's pretty much like, you do what you got to do over there, and then like he'll catch up. Like, I definitely have to like lead all of the things, and he catches up. Like, I remember when we first started dating, even like, he'd snore, and he hated my oils. I used essential oils like crazy. He hated them, and I would just like slap it on his chest, and he'd be so mad when he woke up. He's like, yeah, put lavender on me. And now he like asks for them. Like, he's like, I need them. And so it's like, same when I started eating better. Like, he's like, you do you, but like, so we had to have 2 separate toasters, because I was too sensitive to handle his food and my food, blah blah blah. And now he's like, I'll just eat the way you do. Like, he's like, I actually feel better. My shoulder, you know, so he like comes around to it. Now, like full circle, he will like see things and notice things. And in our old house, like in the last like 3 or 4 months, we had like physical things like coming at him. So he'd have like this white shadowed spirit, which I never saw in that house, which is so interesting. He'd see it like march through the kitchen or like barge through the bathroom when he's like in there peeing. And he's like, I thought it was the dogs. And then I look and they're on the couch and it's like this thing coming at me. And so it's like, it also like woke him up a little bit of just like, here's some drops, here's some nuggets. He'll say, I think it was like this winter, he's like, I can see if I close my eyes, this vibrates and I can see like this little tiny, and he described it. I'm like, oh, it's a gray. Like you can see a gray. Like, I don't know what it's doing for you in your brain, but like, you know,
so
and I will say too, he was hearing voices for a while, but only at night. So it was like a little interesting because like in the muscle testing realm, like I can just test everything, which is fantastic. And it was a little bit like, everyone that I was talking to, all these practitioners reaching out, they're like, it sounds like schizophrenia. It sounds like schizophrenia, you know? I'm like, but it's only when he's sleeping. Well, it was mold. Like we lived in a house that had mold. So once we got rid of his pillow, which was moldy because it used to be from our old house, put him on a mold clearing protocol, he quit hearing voices. So it was like so cool to see through the muscle testing. We're like, this type of mold causes neurotic disruption and voice, you know, where we're like, that's not spirits. That's, although I will say I do see a lot of dark spirits in mold. Like they kind of come hand in hand because they're very low density, low vibration. But
interesting.
all to say, my husband just kind of tends to come around, which is very nice.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
So I can't believe we're almost at an hour and we haven't spoken about really our readings. So Gabby, do you want to go first?
Oh, yeah. Well, since our initial reading, I've had a couple because I'm in the process of detoxing because since you do work closely with mothers and children, not that I'm trying to get pregnant or have any intention of that in the near future, but I think the time frame was 3 months before conception and then up to 3 years. And at this point, I've been in the game long enough to know that like my physical body is going to take a hit in some capacity when I go through an upgrade. I mean, hence the hives on my left side, guys. And so just the wealth of knowledge that you are, the help that you've been able to provide, the connection that is showing up in like my different energy centers, and just like providing just like supplements and different binders and different ways to detox my body. And then also just linking that to like things that really never made sense as to like why I'm here and like why I'm struggling so hard at times, like just to like kind of get people to like wake up and like do this, but knowing that that's part of my mission. You're like, well, it's a past life thing. So it was just a beautiful blend of quite literally like practical health things that you can tangibly see in a 3D form, use to detox and like support your body, and then making sense of it from the spiritual perspective as to like, okay, well, this is happening and this is what's going on an energetic level. And I'm just excited to work with you. And I love working with you, especially as I work on clearing out my system to get ready for a baby in about 3 years.
Thank you. Yeah. So fun to work with you.
What about you, Nichole?
So I don't know, because it was funny when we did the reading, I was like, Michelle, like, so what do you do? And she was just like, it's like hard to describe. Like I kind of do this, I kind of do that. And so it was really interesting because we went in and then you had, so not only did you just read like chakra, and so just the general 7 that everybody that knows chakras have heard of, but you were talking about another chakra that was over, I forgot, was it the star chakra or?
Some refer to it as a star chakra.
Okay. And how that one was like blocked, and you said it was being blocked by like a warlock kind of. And you talked about some of the things that were happening, how it like things weren't filtering straight in, and they were kind of like, because it was upside down, and so it was making things really difficult. And so we cleared it together. And I remember I had texted you, I think a few days later, and I was like, I don't know what happened. I mean, I know what happened. I know it was the clearing of it, but I was like, I sat in meditation for 20 minutes, like no problem. I was just still, and I was like, this is like so easy to meditate right now. And I've noticed it was easy for a while. Lately it's gotten a little more difficult again. So I don't know if there's something else going on, like maybe if it's growing back like hair, like you cut it and then it's like coming back. But it was really interesting, just some of the things that were coming up. But that was definitely the biggest change that I noticed, where I was like, oh, I can meditate much easier and I can be more still. Like, this is amazing. I still don't quite understand the other things we did, and I don't need to, but because it was just like, okay, I get it. Like, I see the difference. And we didn't even do any of the stuff for like mothers and preparing, which maybe we should, because I am trying
We
to
definitely
get pregnant,
can.
and I'm having some infertility stuff, and you know, there's been a lot of work with that. So maybe we'll talk when we're done.
Yeah, let's definitely talk. Mm-hmm.
I just feel like this is quite literally the first part to a second episode that I know we need to do with you, because I'm like, all right, let's get a little weird. Let's go deeper into aliens on Earth. What's really going on? And just add to that whole conspiracy thing that I'm on, because you guys know I'm on an alien kick right now. And I'm like, all right, Galactic Astrology is a thing, guys. Stay tuned for that offering.
I really want to learn more about this like soft disclosure stuff that keeps coming up.
It is happening, and it's kind of like there's some like universal laws where like they can't so like the Galactic Federation, I think you guys talked about them. Yeah, they're like basically like if United Nations was actually for the better of the planet, like it'd be like the United Nations of the galactic, like of the universe, of the universes.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're the good guys. They kind of oversee everything. They have like these very specific codes and laws and rules. So they can't like give us technology. They can't help and come and save us. And it reminds me of Star Trek when like they accidentally let that population, like that native planet, like see them, and they're like, you weren't supposed to let them see you, like because they were saving the planet to explode. It kind of reminds me of that, where they can't interfere with like natural awakening, natural processing, but they can like give you clues, they can give you codes, and part of it's like we're not at a point in our consciousness to be able to tolerate them. Like even people who work with extraterrestrials and we see the starseeds and we have them come through, like it's intense to like see them. It's a lot of energy to hold. Like most of the populace would lose their mind maybe. Yep. And I think is it the Brookings report? Don't quote me on that, but there's this report that they did, and this was way back when they were first doing this, and they did a study to see if like the population could handle that, like there are ETs and the government's been working with them. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember totally what the results actually were of that study, but from it, they were like, nope, they can't. Like, they're going to go into mass psychosis. Like, don't let them do that. And you're like, well, what was COVID? Like, everyone went crazy then. Like, I think that was a good, like, precursor to, like, hey, here's some big shit, and let's see what you do with it. But it's slowly going to just continue to happen. And you're going to see, like, the matrix is getting a little bit thinner. That's why there's more UFO sightings. That's why you're just going to start to see all this stuff, and you're kind of like, the mainstream media is talking about UFOs now. Like, okay, that's interesting. Like,
so, okay. Do you believe, because our girlfriend, so I see this is another thing that's been coming up, and I'm not going to share how your higher self shows up to me, which we found on our retreat before we all got sick, which I thought was hilarious. And Nichole, I'll share with you after, but
because I scared everyone.
One of our girlfriends, she's a maverick, right? So she's kind of like a tourist, mm-hmm. and she goes to different planets, and she's here to do very specific type of work, and it's going to look really cool. But she was like, Gab, like, think about it. If everyone were to wake up right now, the fucking world would implode. That's why the healers are going through it, and we literally get dragged under, and we're waking mm-hmm. everyone up around us, because it's a slow, like, segmented thing, but it's happening in real time. And like, obviously, if we're here, we're having this conversation, we're asking, like, what is our purpose? What are we really here for? Like, we already are in that process, and everyone else is just going to follow. But there's like the conversation that Dolores Cannon had, and she did quantum hypnosis. And I know I'm not saying that right, but
yeah, QHHT. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And she's like, New Earth, like, you're either going to be pulled into it or you're going to be left behind. And it's going to be literally two different realities happening at once on planet Earth. And so, yeah, there's so much we could go down that road. There's so much to be said, but I wanted to mm-hmm. say, do you believe in the theory that, or the conversation that in the center of the moon, it is a hollow meeting ground conference center for the Galactic Federation?
I truthfully don't believe that. Well, I guess I'd have to like double check and pulse. It is hollow. I do believe that, like, firm and solid. Even some of their different like missions and things, like they would drop these things and it would just like, it'd have like sound that radiates forever. And they're like, that would never happen if it was like a dense mass. And I thought that it was mostly like reptilian and or like German Nazis that were like in the moon and taking it over. So I think that like I'm a little bit like, I don't think the Galactic Federation meets there, but I do believe it's a conference center. I just don't think it's where the Galactic Federation is housed. But they've been taking a lot of things over. So maybe they actually have like, because I know Mars was liberated. There were a ton of like wars and like they're liberated now. So that's interesting.
I know none of this stuff. I barely heard about the Galactic Federation. Oh, I think I was listening to a podcast behind the Emerald Veil. They were talking about it. Shout out to Mandy Nelson. And yeah, I think that's when I heard about it. And I was like, what is this? I need to do more research. So we've already decided that Michelle's coming back to talk to us about the Galactic Federation, soft disclosure, and just protection. All things aliens. Yeah, protection protocols, I think. So that way when Gabby gets abducted, she knows what to do.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I'd say that's like the biggest, like if anyone could walk away, whether you believe it or not, like there's whatever, but like we can all agree that there's some sort of energy out there. It's like you have free will. If we could just all come back to our own free will and know that like you can detach, and you might need some help at first with different energy healers, but like you have control. Like we are not just victims. It feels like it, but we're not. So just reel back in your own power and control your destiny,
This one went way too fast.
It did.
Michelle,
so fast.
Where can the people find you? Where can I book a reading with you? Tell us all the things.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Michelle Marie Larson. I'm on TikTok as Raising Starseeds, and you can book a reading. You can just find my links on the Instagram. I'm working on a website, getting that going, but definitely going like real deep down the Starseeds train. So I'll do a lot of like education. What is it? How can you protect it? Like, especially for the kids, like people who struggle, like a lot of my content's geared towards mothers and children. I work with everyone, but that's really like where it's at. So yeah, find me on the gram and hop on my newsletter as well. You can do that.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
We'll include everything in the show notes, and then we're going to have you back.
Yeah.
To talk about more things, aliens. And then maybe then, if you're comfortable, when we talk about those things, if you wouldn't mind sharing like just what you remember from the abductions or how many, because we didn't really get too much into it other than like it happened. But I definitely want to hear more.
Yeah, I'm definitely open to that for sure.
And then maybe Gabby will have been abducted by then, and we'll have a story to share. She keeps calling it in. Gabby, I just want to say, be careful what you call in, be careful what you wish for, because then you're going to come back and maybe you're going to be scared. I don't know.
I am an alien existing on Earth, and I only call in the higher and the good aliens. But honestly, I don't think I can avoid it, Nichole. I think it's kind of just something that's there.
I can't. So let's make sure it's not when I'm with you.
We talked with at our retreat, like even Nikki Novo was like, I just want this experience. I just want this experience. And then like had one in her room. Hopefully she didn't mind us sharing this, and then was like, okay, I'm good. And she was just like, been there, done that. I don't want more.
Yeah.
So you'll know like if it's, but really it's like a whole activated, like it's a whole thing. Yeah.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, let's definitely pick that up the next time we talk to you, because I'm so fascinated, because I'm also on an alien kick, but I'm not calling in being abducted. So
I mean, I'm not trying to be abducted. I want to make contact. Like I want them to give me like codes and shit. Like I want to be a communicator for them, guys. That's what I'm here to do.
Yeah. And I have been shown and told like they don't like to be called aliens. They want to be called extraterrestrials or like extra dimensionals.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just even sometimes when you're calling in, like, it's kind of like just calling someone by their wrong name or something. You're like, oh no, I'm gonna call in like the ETs, the extra dimensionals, like because we're so multifaceted, just like they are.
Yeah, so true. Thank you for that.
Of course.
Okay, guys, stay tuned for the next episode with Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. That went by like way too fast. I'm like, how are we already over an hour? Because just so good. So I can't wait for the next one. And who knows, maybe that'll be a two-parter also. Oh my goodness. Okay, guys. Thanks for listening. See you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.